Oh, hi everyone. Good afternoon to you all. On the show today, I have with me a very special lady by the name Debbie Deegan, the founder and CEO of a charity called To Children with Love. Debbie's charity helps disadvantaged children at home and abroad to achieve their full potential. She's also an inspirational speaker, TEDx talker, social entrepreneur, mentor, a life coach, and author. I'm happy to add that Debbie has received numerous awards: the International Person of the Year, UNESCO Tolerance Award, WMB Social Entrepreneur Award, and most recently the Innovator of Change Award from the Eurasian Women's Forum. In 2018, Debbie received the highest honor in Russia when she was awarded the Order of Friendship Award by President Vladimir Putin at a ceremony in the Kremlin. Debbie did a powerful TEDx talk in London, recounting her journey from starting the charity leading up to receiving the Kremlin Award. Debbie has written 2 books based on the charity's history and work, and she is also working on a series of children's books. She has contributed to various television and radio programs and publications nationwide and internationally. So I would like to welcome Debbie to the Carol Azams Show. Debbie, you happen to be an Irish woman who set up a massive charity. I would like to know why you decided to set up this charity in Russia.
Hi, Carol. It's so nice to talk, and thank you very much for including me in your absolutely fabulous book. It's been such a pleasure to be part of the whole process. So, I went to Russia in 1998, and the reason I went was because we take Chernobyl children to Ireland since Chernobyl, the tragedy in Chernobyl in 1986, and we took in 2 little girls, and it said orphan on their little jumpers when they came to me, and I just had never even seen the word written down before, other than in a Shakespearean novel, I think. I decided to take the children and wrap them up in pink cotton wool, literally. And that was why we decided in the very first place to get involved. And it was just for holiday, for rest and recuperation. Nothing else other than a couple of weeks. We decided during their stay that we wanted the 2 of them to have a proper family, and so we got involved in the whole process of looking at how you do that and how you would adopt them and all that. So that's what took me to Russia. I decided after they went back the first time, which they had to go home, I decided to go to Russia a year later and find where they came from, and that brought me through, I got off the plane in Minsk actually and drove through 8 hours of snow and the deepest forests I could ever imagine, as I'm from Ireland, so we've only a small country. And the sky was so high and so big, and billions of stars, it seemed to me, and the whole thing was like something from a magical fairy tale. So that was my first impression of Russia, until I got to the doors of a great big old creaking orphanage. And I opened the gates on a winter's day in the snow, and I saw before me about 250 silent children, and I just could not believe that these children all lived with their parents. It was 1998. It was a very difficult time in Russia, and the banking system had just crashed. Everybody was poor. The place was absolutely in bits. No toilets, no kitchens working, no staff had been paid. Putin had just come to power, and the children were cold, miserable, filthy, traumatized, brokenhearted, silent, dark circles under their eyes. And I just found one little girl that I particularly connected with. And when I was leaving after 4 or 5 days, I was holding on to her, and she said, "Tell Debbie I've never been kissed before," to my translator. And that was, for me, that was enough. So I made a promise to her that I'd come back And that was the beginning of my journey. I gathered a group of people around me and we started a charity called To Russia with Love at the time. And we made a decision at a very early stage that we were going to try and rebuild every child there. And that's exactly what we set about doing. And that's exactly what we did. So it's been a magnificent project of passion and hard work and discipline and cultural differences, and fascinating.
So my next question actually is about the lockdown. I think during the first lockdown, I would want to believe that people were more stressed than they are now. I also noticed that many people were also at the peak of their creativity. You know, in your own case, you started your own TV channel called the DDPK. On that platform, you were able to interview people from across the globe, including, you know, former President Mary McAleese. Can you tell us what exactly did you talk about?
So yes, so last March then, I had just come back from a trip to Russia, and we went straight into lockdown. And I'd done like 22 years of constant traveling, and I just found the lockdown, initially it scared the wits out of me, the silence, the birds whistling in the back garden, no noise of traffic. And I just thought, oh my God, I don't have a center to my day, because I'm normally up at like 6 o'clock, up out of the bed, dogs down to the sea, whatever, I live near. And so I panicked really in the first few days and thought, my God, I can't live like this. It's ridiculous. Like, we're doing nothing all day. So on Patrick's Day last year, the 17th of March, I slapped on the makeup and I decided to do a chat on video, and that developed. And then I started something called DDPK, which was Debbie Deegan's Pink Kitchen, because I have a pink kitchen. And for the following 8 or 10 months, well, really, I interviewed people all across the world. Everybody from like New Zealand, America, Canada. I did just the most amazing people. We discussed all sorts of subjects, from Black Lives Matter to All Lives Matter. We discussed women's issues. I even managed to interview Mary McAleese, who was one of the previous presidents of Ireland, who's one of my absolute heroes in this world. She's an amazing woman. And we discussed like all sorts of subjects, from how her style of leadership to the fact, do women make better leaders? And she did talk about the fact that just because you're a woman doesn't give you a place at a boardroom table, that you need to be like a good woman. And she brought up the fact that Margaret Thatcher was her example, I think, of just because you're a woman doesn't make you a really good leader. And she brought up the fact that Margaret Thatcher was definitely not, she in her book was not that. So we did discuss that a bit. So she's an amazing woman. I have the highest respect for her. She's just one of those brilliant minds.
Right, that is interesting. I would like to say that Mary McAleese, she's a woman after my own heart, and I can't wait for an opportunity to interview her someday on my show. I like to say that I had the opportunity of meeting her once when she came to Finglas to commission a brand new resource center. I took the opportunity to join the rest of the community in welcoming her. So Debbie, you've done a TEDx talk as well. Can you tell us how you landed that in the first place? And also, please, can you describe what it feels like to be on the stage of a TEDx talk?
I had just come off the back of a really, really busy year. The TED people contacted me, the TEDx people contacted me from the UK and asked me to go for an interview. And I was thinking, oh my God, I had wanted to do one for so long, because I watch them all of the time. I'm just completely, if you have a half an hour spare, just sit down and watch TED Talk. You will always be fascinated by them. And there's millions of them now with the TEDx in cities all over the world. So I went to England and did an interview and got the job. And then they give you 6 months to prepare. I did it for Kingston upon Thames, which is the most beautiful little town outside London. And so in the beginning, it didn't bother me at all, because I'm happy to talk all the time. I love talking. But they gave me a coach, and she struggled, I think, with me a bit. She was a fantastic girl called Tara. And she's a volunteer that works with the TED people and prepares them for the stage. But she made me talk slower. She made me do things that I wouldn't normally do. So I found the coaching quite difficult because I'm very hard to coach as a person. But by the time you get to TED, to the stage part, you haven't learned it off completely, which I'd never done with anything before, because I'm inclined to shoot from the hip and talk about things as they come and go in and out of my head. And so the discipline of learning what's next. The problem with that is if you forget something, it slightly throws you. So you have to be able to pick back up. But yeah, it's absolutely exhilarating, in a word, to walk out onto that red dot and stand there in front of, like, I don't know, 2,000 people. And for 18 minutes, you are allowed 18 minutes approximately, and to tell your story and to try and make them, engage with you, like you, believe you. I told a funny story, actually, which I didn't think was that funny in the early stages of the chat, and about sitting between Vladimir Putin and the Russian Pope for dinner in the Kremlin, and it made people laugh, actually. And I think once people laughed, then they're inclined to like you, and they're also inclined to just, come along with you on your talk. I think humor is a really big part of something like that. It really does make a difference if you can do it without being forced funny. So yeah, the TED, I'd highly recommend anybody, if they can do a TEDx. It's absolutely a fabulous thing to do. I absolutely adored doing it, and I had a whole load of stuff after it that was really good for me, and it really opened a lot of doors for me.
Wow. So what has been your biggest challenge, so far in running the children's orphanage, especially during this period of COVID pandemic?
The biggest challenges for me during the pandemic, because none of us thought it was going to go on for a year. So the first 3 months, I suppose, were quite a novelty. I was enjoying it. We had great weather. My husband built me I'm sitting in it at the moment, built me a she shed, as I didn't even know they existed as a thing. I put it together with like old vintage mirrors. I have an old chandelier over my head, which is covered in all my girlfriends' jewellery. Everybody that comes for dinner was hanging a piece of jewellery on it. So it's the most gorgeous thing. And we built it kind of out of nothing. We had old windows stored somewhere. We used the old windows, and it's the most peaceful space in my garden. I absolutely love it, and I've been working from here for the last year. So that was an absolute pleasure to have that built for me. I think it was to keep me out of the house. And the biggest challenges for me were obviously the worry of trying to keep the charity open, because we were based on events only, and as well as 2 charity shops, we have really, really gorgeous charity shops called With Love in Dublin. And initially we stopped paying rent, then we were paying half rent. Since January, the rent's gone up again, and we're really concerned that we're closed now for months, and we've no idea when we're going to open. And it's a real problem for us, because money's going out and not coming in, and that's a huge concern. But we've beautiful children in still in our project in Russia. We're involved with orphans, and we have a magnificent project in Ireland as well called The Rising Tide, with a bunch of fantastic children on a scholarship program. And we need money coming in constantly to support both. And so far, we haven't let any child down with any request over the last year. But keeping the charity alive was definitely a huge task for us all. We went online, and that did help quite a bit, and with our shops, and but still it's not the same as having events running all the time, having balls, having ladies' lunches, having all these sort of things that brought money in. We don't have that now. So yeah, and the pandemic has been a real challenge, and if we don't get open soon, we're going to be in real big trouble.
How many children are there in the orphanage? And how will you describe the day-to-day running of a children's home?
Well, we've worked with thousands of children over the years, literally thousands of orphan children over the years. Initially, when we started, there was 250 children in the orphanage, and the range of ages was from age 6 to age 18. The big 18-year-olds were big and terrifying looking when we came first, covered in tattoos, no teeth, shaved heads, very aggressive, very institutionalized. The little ones were sweet, lost, broken, tragic. And so The little ones that when we started, we've stayed with them to this day, 23 years later. Now a lot of them have gone on to become parents, and we've huge successes with our children. We've broken all the national statistics around orphans, where they end up, and they usually, there's huge statistics around the fact that a lot of them go back into prison, etc. Ours didn't. We trained them to be strong moms, strong dads, and we've just got incredible success around our children, really down to passion, hard work, really, really hard work, a lot of travel. It seems like people run charities and it's all about ladies' lunches. It can be about ladies' lunches, and we need them to bring the money in, but really trains, planes, automobiles, late trains, late planes, left overnight in cities all over Europe when you can't get the last flight home after an exhausting week in -30. I'm not whinging about it because we adore it, but certainly there's definitely work attached. And when we come back from every trip, in general, we're all exhausted. And I'm back and forward for the last 23 years, all the time, nearly every 2 months. Orphanage life. The daily running of orphanage life is quite like a prison. The children get up in the morning, they go out into the yard, they do exercises. Breakfast is in one big canteen. And then they have breakfast, lunch and dinner at the very, very same time every day. It's very regimented. It has to be when you have large numbers. Because of that, I got involved with a consultant from the prison service at a very early stage, because his systems were very similar to prisons systems in an orphanage. And so we improved those systems. We wanted cleaner beds, cleaner children, less head lice, cleaner teeth, better laundries, and then of course we went on to do amazing things, like we brought in astronauts, and we made the children believe that they could reach for the stars, and we made them believe they could be anything that they wanted to be. We really instilled confidence and love. We really and truly made the children feel that they were loved, and that was the magic ingredient. That was our X factor. There's loads of organizations come in with money and stuff and trucks full of goods and all that, but really it was constant drip, 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 drip of unconditional love that gave us the success that we have now.
For the first time you became a nana, but it was in 2020 during a period of a pandemic. Can you describe what kind of feeling it must have been for you in a lockdown?
The most amazing thing, of course, happened to me during the last year, in that I became a nana. And so I have a beautiful daughter, and she gave birth to a magnificent little pandemic baby, right bang in the center of the pandemic. So she had the difficulty of going into hospital without her husband. He was allowed to join her, obviously, at times, at the crucial times. And we have a magnificent little grandson, and he's just like, he's the joy in all of our days. His smile lights up a room, and he's just the joy in all of our days for the last year. Everything else goes out the window. When you have nana love, it's a whole different level. I think it's probably because you can give them back, and so they're even more precious, and they're so more joyful because you don't have them crying in the middle of the night. So he's a joy. He has been the highlight of all of our year.
I'm curious, Debbie, how does your friends describe you?
It's very hard to say those words, I don't know how. So I asked them, I sent a text message when I saw your question. So 4 people came back with 4 words, and I'll read out the words. They are driven, kind, compassionate, and tenacious. So they came in on the WhatsApp group this morning. And so they're the words. I do believe that there's not enough compassion in our world. And I do believe that a lot of people might have empathy for a situation, but I think the compassion is probably the doing word. And I think a lot of people might feel empathetic about something and do nothing about it. And whereas with me, if I see something that I'm not happy about, I have to do something about it. I'm just driven to do something about it. And so that's really what made me stay in Russia, because I felt that what I had as a person, I could give buckets of, and I knew that all my friends and colleagues around me were the same types, and I knew we could make a massive change in those children's lives, and that's exactly what we did. But we did it using love, really, without being cheesy and not being religious, because I'm not. We did use unconditional love as the magic element, and the kids felt it for the first time in their lives, and it made an enormous difference to them.
You happen to be one of the women in my new book, which has women from all over the world, 101 of you all together. I would like to know what endeared you to the idea in the first place. There's something in particular that made you decide to participate.
The reason I did the book was the reason I do most things related to the charity. It's an opportunity for me to get our voice out there. It's an opportunity for me to tell people our story, but it's a vehicle for us to get you become a vehicle, Carol, for us to get our story out there. And the more people that hear that story, the better. 23 years ago, we did our first article in a newspaper in Dublin. And it was a lovely article, and some donations came in from it. We were green, we hadn't a clue how to run a charity, we hadn't a notion what to do, but some kind person spotted our story and did an article in the Sunday Independent in Dublin. And the next day I got a phone call from an American accent, and I thought it was my husband actually messing on the phone. So I kind of said, oh my God, stop messing. Like, we'd a tiny office, we'd no money, we'd no anything. And this person was saying in an American accent, I'd like to give you $25,000. So I thought it was my husband messing. So I was rude and put the phone down. So the person rang back and said, look, I'm sorry, can I talk to somebody like more senior than you, because I want to make a donation. So I thought, oh my God, this is actually real. So this person had seen the Sunday, had flown to Dublin for a funeral, and they were on a flight back to Nassau in the Bahamas. And the Sunday Independent was on the flight, and they read the story on the flight. When they got to Nassau in the Bahamas, they lodged $25,000 into our account. And that was the first month we were set up as a little charity, and we couldn't believe it happened. So that was an opportunity. And I think all media is an opportunity. You never know the day, Melinda Gates or Bill Gates or some philanthropist somewhere sitting watching the TV or watching your show anywhere, and they just think, okay, there's a great story. I was on the Holly and Phil show. At the time it was Holly and Lorraine, actually, or Phil and Lorraine, and some years back. And how I got on that was, one of the researchers was in the dentist, and there was an old woman's own there, girly Mag, and my story was in it, that they had done a big cheesy story on us, and their researcher saw the story and rang me from London, and then flew us in, two of us in, and put us on the Phil, and it was, I think, Fern Britain at the time, and so Lorraine and Philip Schofield interviewed me, and again we got a huge response for it. But I never thought that magazine would be sitting in a doctor's surgery and that some researcher from the Phil show. So I take every opportunity to try and get the word out there, and that's exactly why if anybody asks me to do something, once it's legitimate, and I've looked, we did look at you, Carol, obviously, and made sure everything was legitimate and perfect, and then of course I'm very happy to put my name to it. The women in the book, amazing. I actually bought 2 books, I think, in the first place, and then they got given to people. So I read 1 or 2 stories. Then I ordered another 3 or 4 books, and then I gave them out because people wanted them. And so I'm still waiting. I have 1 book left here that's being parceled to go to somebody in Russia. And so I'm still wading through all the stories. But for me so far, the thread through all of the stories that I've read are so similar. One girl I was reading about last night, she was a life coach, I think, and a business coach, and her business crashed in a day with the pandemic, and she panicked and thought, oh my God, how am I going to pay my bills? And then she reinvented herself. She did a podcast. She did one of my dream jobs, which she became an agony aunt in a magazine, which I'd absolutely love to be. And she did a whole series of stuff that she had never done before, to try and pull herself up by the bootstraps to try and get back in business, and now she's back in business. But when the common thread for me is how hard women work, how creative they are. There's of course some tragedies in the book. There's a beautiful, sad story about a girl's miscarriage and how she comes through that and how she's gotten through it. And just again with women, tenacity, compassion, empathy, hard work, incredibly focused, all of those kind of words. So I found fascinating similarity between the stories, because everybody is fighting to survive, fighting to get their business out there, fighting to do good. They know that more good has to be done in the world. And when I did finish my TED talk, they asked me at the very end, did I want to give one message? They give you that opportunity. And I could have asked for donations, which I love to do. And I said, well, actually, what I'd like to do is just ask every person in the room to do one thing kind when they leave here today. And that'll be another like 2,000 kind things done in a day in the UK. And I do think we need more kindness in our world.
How can people contact you if they decide to make a donation to your orphanage?
If people want to help us, we're on www.tochildrenwithlove.ie. That's tochildrenwithlove.ie. And it's been an incredibly difficult year, and we would be extremely grateful for anybody who wants to make a donation, because we have endless amounts of children that are endlessly dependent on us. We're a small organisation, extremely passionate, and we are extremely dedicated about making a difference in children's lives.
Okay, best of luck to you, Debbie. I'd like to say a huge thank you for trusting me to share your story in my book. Actually, the pleasure is all mine. And thanks for being a guest on the Carol Azams show to even share more about yourself and about the work that you do.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to work with you on the book. It's been a complete joy to be in the same pages as those amazing women. Absolutely a joy to be on the same pages. In fact, I think the 101 of us should probably be in some kind of a big group where we can all tap into one another. And I don't know if it's possible, but I just think it's a lovely group of women to be involved in. I'm honoured to be one of the 101 to be asked. I love women around the world getting together for a purpose and coming together and sharing. I think it's a fantastic power and energy. So, Carol, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope I didn't bore you to death with all of that. Thank you so much.
Viewers, that was my special guest for the show today, Debbie Deegan, who runs a charity in Russia. You've listened to the interview. If you would like to make a donation, please do. You can go to their website, thechildrenwithlove.ie. Once again, my name is Carol Azams. I have been your host on the show. I look forward to come your way again next time. Until then, it's goodbye and God bless.